Let's delve into the matter of both historical significance and cultural complexity. The unprecedented divorce proceedings are filed by King Misuzulu kaZwelithini, monarch of the Zulu nation. This development marks one of the rare times in the 209-year history of the Zulu royal family that a sitting king has sought a divorce. As a monarch navigates his personal and public legal matter, it also raises important questions about the intersection of modernity, Zulu cultural traditions, and the evolving dynamics within royal households. And joining us to unpack the cultural, historical, and societal implications of this event is Professor Musa Xulu, cultural expert and head of Idonsa Yesizwe think tank. Professor, always good to speak to you. Compliments of the year. Now, let's start off with, how does Zulu tradition view the institution of marriage within the royal family?
Well, good afternoon, Hugo, and good afternoon to your viewers. Well, there's a level at which the Zulu royal family becomes just another family with its own internal dynamics and relationships among each other, which would be the same like in any other family. But there's a level at the ritual and the ceremonial level where they are seen to be an exemplary family in terms of how to conduct your affairs. Now, the issue that we're discussing today, it started very well. I think in 2002, it was one of the fairy tale stories, although culturally, up until now, the actual marriage, according to Zulu culture, had not been completed. What had happened is that they had gone to Home Affairs and they had married there. But a Zulu marriage gets completed when it is done in the form of a ceremony, singing amahubo songs, inviting the ancestors and the nation, all in public. It was expected that it would proceed until that ultimate level. Unfortunately, as you say now, and the media has told us, and everyone in the courts have told us, there is a divorce that has been filed for. It happened before with King Zulu. That he divorced his wife, or she divorced him, one of his wives, but it's a very rare occasion to happen, because Zulu culture looks at the institution of marriage as permanent, irrespective of what happens. You may clash over this and that, but it is regarded as permanent.
Professor, you've indicated that even the royal family at some point operates like a regular family. And I'd imagine that in a regular family, if there is disagreement or if a couple are not getting along, there is a process of engagement with the elders in order to try and deal with the issue. Does this process take place, from your understanding?
Well, there were, because this thing has not started now, Hugo. There has been a couple of months, maybe the whole of 2024, where this issue was on and off, and people were discussing it informally in many platforms. There would have been attempts to bring together the two families, but you must also remember that the Zulu royal family at the moment is a very divided family because of the disputes, the kingship disputes that are there. So it would perhaps be difficult for the in-betweens, the people who were trying to connect the two families, to perfect the discussions for reconciliation, because sometimes His Majesty is more of like an isolated person, and members of his family tend to be slightly away from him, which leaves him vulnerable. I think those attempts did not get to anywhere. There could be other issues. He got a new wife now. I hear he's going to marry. There's going to be a wedding in January. There was another one in Eswatini. She also disappeared. So it's not very stable. I'm just thinking that maybe those who were connecting the two families would have come to a point where they just couldn't resolve the situation.
Now, Prof, is a king devoid of sound advisors? Because when you suggest that there were that very little would have happened in the way of granting him advice or audience because of the divided family, as you say, does it suggest that he is devoid of sound advice?
Well, his biggest advisor was the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. You remember how stable the kingdom was at that stage. But with those skirmishes between the two, and then the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi passing away in the year 2023, there has been, for me as an analyst and an observer, some kind of vacuum in terms of quality advisors to advise His Majesty and strengthen the kingdom. And I'm not passing judgment on anyone. I know Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi was Prime Minister, traditional Prime Minister. It's not a job that he could have successfully done it alone because it's complex. Kingship is a very complex institution with many angles. So he needed a lot of elders to be around the king and who have experience and knowledgeables to can help the king to settle and so on, instead of being sometimes on the news all for wrong reasons most of the time.
And how is this development, in your view, likely to be received by the Zulu nation and South Africans more broadly?
Well, divorce does not shock anybody in South Africa, so maybe they will not be shocked. But from the comments that I heard from some other people, they look at it as part of a series of disturbing tendencies that maybe things are not as stable as they should be in the Zulu kingship and the kingdom. Because divorce always signals disagreement and lack of spirit of reconciliation. So there's a lot of concern among many people that, even that maybe somebody should have announced to the nation so that it does not come just only through the courts, but people also know through some traditional prime minister or spokesperson of some sort. So, and the Makhosi are also meeting today. We don't know what they are discussing. I know this issue will be one of them. So there is a need for some kind of unification and bring together all the elements of the kingdom and the kingship to strengthen His Majesty.
So let's talk about the challenges that arise when traditional values intersect with modern legal frameworks, such as in this matter, and also the implications on the stability of the Zulu kingdom, because it's largely based on how the royal family operates, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, there has been a history of missionization, which was a major contributor to the cultural transformation of not only the Zulu people, but also many other peoples throughout sub-Saharan Africa and in the diaspora. And then, of course, values changed as a result of colonialism, and in the case of South Africa, apartheid and the laws and so on. And so the traditional values are diminishing slowly, but the Zulu people are generally being seen as people who value their cultural heritage, their past and their traditional systems. But once things like this start happening, you will begin to see a lot of people maybe just looking away from the kingdom and saying, maybe let's just continue with our journey of urbanization and modernization. Because the good thing about a semi-urban, semi-rural province like KZN, people are able to transform themselves between urbanization and rural life. Especially, we find a lot of that during December. That's when they come into contact with cultures and traditions. But if those practices are diminishing, then of course it will have an impact of people just eventually and suddenly focusing more on what stands in front of them, which is urbanization, industrialization, and of course modernization, townships, and all of those things. And usually once that happens, traditional institutions and kingdoms just die a natural death without support of the populace.
All right, now we understand that the king has made a decision to offer spousal maintenance under civil law instead of customary law. What is your take on this? I think there's an amount of 20,000 rand a month for a 12-month period that he's offered in the event that the Queen does not defend the issue. I think from what the papers have said. Your perspective on this?
Well, I think what she will say, what the Queen will say, because she's the only one that's married currently to the King, she will want 50% of possibly his salary from government, which is a chief director's salary. She's likely to oppose the 20,000, and eventually she may walk away with that 50% from a legal perspective and possibly other impacts. That's why Zulu traditionalists always avoid divorce at all costs, because it impoverishes families.
And very quickly, just is this likely to get messy? Will it tarnish the name of the king, the name of the kingdom, in your view?
Well, as I said, there is now confirmed also in media that the king will be married to another wife, Mamiene, later on this month or early in February. So he will continue to have a wife, at least one. In terms of tarnishing his name, look, the king simply, for me, really, and I appeal here, needs very strong people to surround him and help him with the processes of decision-making. He's a very good king, very likable, and he is very much a people's person. But you can see then there is the story of Reverend Tula Caesar, there is the story of Ngonyama Trust, then there is the story of the Minister of Land and Rural Development telling him that he does not have powers to fire the board and executive of Ngonyama Trust. Then there is this story. Usually, kings are very ceremonial people, and his public perception or brand should be that of the king that we see in ceremonies.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave that conversation. Professor Musa Xulu walking us through certainly the challenges that the king will go through or will have to face in dealing with this divorce. Appreciate your time.